Hi everybody, we're going to continue today with Whittington. We are on chapter 21, Ben's reading. The sun was gaining on winter. There was a new smell in the air. The pond boomed and cracked as the ice broke up. In the paddock, bare places appeared with puddles of meltwater the lady found pleasant for bathing. There were robins and the scree of red-winged blackbirds claiming territory still under snow. Around the pond margin, celandines made tiny suns and skunk cabbages bloomed squat, plum-colored cowls streaked with gold. They were rank-smelling. Nobody ate them. Winter rye in the fields was going from yellow to green as it unrumpled. With the finches, it was all the other way. Bernie counted spring from when the finches started going from dirty green to yellow. The road was grease again. Bernie had to hike down the hill. The pump had thawed free, though, so there was water handy. Coraggio and his band of bantams were parading out farther and farther every day after morsels, infuriating Marker, the dog who watched everything from the house on the hill. The rooster was expert at kicking away straw and dung and finding knots of pink worms. When he turned those up, the bantams cheered as if they'd found candy. The lady followed too, eager for new green shoots and the fat gray grubs Coraggio excavated. The bantams were back to laying eggs. Abby and Ben hunted for them. The rats were holding to the pact. There were occasional stinks from eggs the bantams forgot and the kids didn't find. The stink of a rotten egg is noble. It worried Abby the way the chickens went after worms. In school, Mrs. Harris told them that worms plow more soil than all the tractors in the world. Abby figured the way Coraggio and his gang were going after them, there wouldn't be any worms left. Ben struggled with his half-dozen words a day, trying not to guess, taking his time. They'd abandoned Abby's spelling book. The cat said those words were too advanced. They should concentrate on everyday words. Words for things the boy could see, like egg, ice, chicken, barn, horse. Ben did better with those. What worked best, though, were Dick's maxims, like tell truth and shame the devil. Ben read that through once with Abby helping. The second time he got it on his own. He was tickled. But he's not reading, Abby said. He memorized. He's reciting.
So what? Said the cat. That's the way Dick learned, reciting from memory as he followed the letters.
Abby wasn't sure that counted. Whittington had some more of Dick's rememberables for Abby to copy and tape up under Psalm. A cat may look on a king. If you know not me, you know nobody. Time and tide wait for no man. What is no good for the bee is no good for the hive.
And here's one by a dog about his dead master,
Whittington added. Augustus Jones taught me to beg. Upon his bones I lift my leg. Ben read them on his own the second time through. Abby was still dubious. That's not going to help him with his book in school, and it isn't touching numbers. The worst is numbers. Ben glowered. The cat's eyes narrowed. Enough, the lady said. Time for the story. 22. To Africa on the Unicorn. Whittington took his place. By the time the merchant saw Dick off at Limehouse Wharf, the boy had become more than his clerk. Fitzwarren gave him a square of blue silk to tie around his neck for luck. Dick was 11. He knew which fabrics and spices would do well in the shop, how much to pay for them, and how to judge their quality. Fitzwarren knew he would find good things and buy wisely. If the voyage went well, the shop would profit. The risk of it, though, was more than a merchant's risk for Fitzwarren. The boy had gained a place in his heart. Then, as now, the sea claimed many, what with storms, wars, pirates, and the risk of diseases like scurvy on board and plague in port. What's scurvy? Ben asked. On long voyages without fresh fruits and vegetables, the crew's gums began to bleed. They got bruises and their joints went bad. We know now it's caused by a lack of vitamin C. Gran gives us stuff with vitamin C, Abby said. The cat nodded. We make our own. Only humans have that problem. The ship Dick and his cat hauled away in was a small, and it was vulnerable, he continued.
Her mainsail had a strange green stripe across the top. The other sails in harbor were tan, brown, and white. From her forward halyard, she flew the flag of St. George, a red cross on a white field. It was a sign that the vessel was from a Christian country. From where Fitzwarren stood, the ship looked tiny. The sea was bigger than anything Dick had ever seen, boring and endless until the wind moaned and slammed and it became hills and swoops of black oil he was sure would drown him as the ship heaved and shuddered, worse than the agent's carriage when the robbers attacked it. Their trip took 3 weeks. The cat got her sea legs quickly. Dick was seasick for days. His bed was a shallow bunk. It was always moving. He wanted more than anything for his bed to hold still. The only light came from an oil lamp that guttered and shifted on its mounting near his head. The smoke didn't help how he felt. Then one day, he was well. He was never seasick again. He slept on deck no matter what the weather. The fresh food ran out and the water grew stale. They ate porridge, dried apples, salt fish and salt pork, peas, beans, cheese, pickled cabbage, and hardtack. Small ingots of saltless bread baked hard and packed dry so it wouldn't rot. There were daily rations of hard cider. When their lines were lucky, they had fresh fish. Sometimes there were eggs from the chickens on board, sometimes a cup of goat's milk, once a dinner of roast goat. They sailed south down the coast of France, then across the Bay of Biscay to put in at Lisbon, where they got fresh water and traded for black peppercorns, wine, oil, and olives. The men they traded with served them cups of sweetened tea and dried figs. Dick's eyes widened as he tasted for the first time the fig's honey-like sweetness. From Lisbon they sailed into the Mediterranean, past Gibraltar, where only 12 miles of water separate Europe from Africa. Dick looked to his right, and there was all of Africa in a red haze. On board, meanwhile, among ballast, stores, fetid water, and spilled cargo, the cat made a great slaughter of rats. It was her habit to lay the kills on deck by the hatchway. The sailors cheered as they flung the rats into the water by their tails. There were moans from the dark part of the barn where the rats were listening. The cat became the pet of everyone, Whittington continued. They landed at Tripoli in North Africa and called upon the king there, who was a particular friend of the captain's. It was he who had whispered the secret of Amapacheri, the healing herb he hoped to gain a fortune by. The boys squinted in the glare. Unlike London, where they build to catch the sun, here everything was built to avoid it. The palace entrance was pale yellow. There were greenish-blue tiles with Arabic writing that spelled out, "Above all things is justice." The palace was a hodgepodge of low forts and shrines built around courtyards shaded with palm trees. The hard palm leaves clacked in the slight breeze. Dick had never seen a palm before. Inside the palace was a labyrinth of dirty, narrow passages with slit windows. The passages led to small, dark rooms, closets, storage chambers, and sleeping quarters for soldiers and court retainers. The only light came from the slit windows that let in a constant stream of dust and fine sand, insects, and dried leaves. The passageways were paved with bricks. There were shallow stairs where you wouldn't expect them. A couple of times Dick stumbled in the gloom. The cat rode on his shoulder. In the room where Dick was sent to wash and relieve himself, a large rat jumped from the cistern, frightening the cat. In her surprise, she clawed her master. She was embarrassed and vowed vengeance on that rat. "What's a cistern?" Abby asked. "A large water pot," Whittington replied. "And the rat was in it?" Abby asked. The cat nodded. Abby shuddered. "The throne room was round and shadowed," he continued. Fresh air and light came from an opening in the roof that directed a spot of brightness to one place. Very slowly the spot moved around the room. In the center the king sat, large and shapeless, on a bed of embroidered silks. He had a wand of long feathers with rows of round, gold-colored eyes, said to spell out evil. They had been bright once. When he wanted something, he thumped his wand and 4 men jumped. Around the room were large and small cages with peacocks, parrots, parakeets, and other birds, all whooping and clattering. Rat and mice scurried about. It smelled of bird dirt and the perfumed smoke coming from a large bronze can with holes in its side and top. A veiled woman in a white gown passed a plate of dates to the visitors. Dick had never had a date before. The fruit was sweet and grainy. When she passed the plate again, he took another. The king was more olive-colored than brown. His face was as smooth as a baby's, soft, hairless, slightly wrinkled except around his eyes and forehead. His hair was long, black, pulled back, and tied so tight his eyes bulged. The back of his hand, when Dick bent to kiss it, was cold and sticky, like a frog's back. He was a great warrior. The birds had been given to him as tribute. As the captain and the king talked, their murmuring and the steady bird racket made Dick sleepy. The cat was resting in his lap. Suddenly she stiffened, tense, and soared across the room to land on a rat. The battle was brief. She knew exactly where to bite at the back of the neck to sever the spinal cord. The king heard the rat's death shriek. Rats ruled his palace. His kingdom was infected with vermin. When he heard how Dick Whittington's cat had cleared the unicorn of rats, he swore he had to have her, whatever the cost. At that moment she deposited the dead rat at his feet. There was no ratter like her in his kingdom. He was rich and impatient. He was used to getting his way. He did not like to bargain because that put him on an equal footing with another person. Since he was superior to everyone, his way of dealing was to take by force when he could, and in every other circumstance to offer such an overwhelming price the trade was settled immediately. In exchange for the cat, he offered the cargo Dick had selected from his warehouses: bales of raw cotton from desert countries, bundles of woven silk that had come overland from China and India, dye-stuffs, rare gums, wrapped blocks of opium, casks of wine and oil, circles of pressed figs, cakes of precious sugar, sacks of cardamom, ginger, cinnamon, cloves. Dick was astonished. The cat was more than his friend. He had more feeling for her than for anyone. Yet she was looking up at him with the strange, knowing look she'd given him the first time he'd seen her in front of the greencoats. Her look said, "Okay," and suggested he keep silent. He couldn't speak anyway. He could hardly breathe. The king was so anxious to buy the cat, he took the boy's silence for a merchant's shrewdness to get a better price. With a slap of his fat hands and an angry squeal, he ordered his first man to bring a bag of jewels. Dick was too bewildered to say anything. The captain was kicking him and muttering. The cat sat in Dick's lap, looking on and purring loudly. Suddenly, she vanished. "So, my young master," said the king, nodding and screwing his mouth into a smile he didn't feel, and holding up his hands in pretend surrender. "What may I add to the cargo and the jewels?"
"The Amabatchery,"
whispered Dick. The king gasped. "How did you know?" At that moment, another rat screamed its last. "Yes," the king murmured, "for to have such a cat would be a boon to my people. They would be able to save their food and their homes would be cleaner. She will bear generations of ratters." Dick exchanged the cat for the cargo, the jewels, and the sacks of the herb and its seeds. He had the same lost feeling he'd had when he'd heard the harsh, dry bell of home. It felt wrong to let the cat go, even though she'd given him a signal. There was no parting. The cat had disappeared before the boy could change his mind. "All will be well," said the captain. "Back in London you'll find another cat." If the boy cried, no one saw. He left with the captain for London. He knew there wasn't going to be another cat. And that's where we'll stop today. Hope you've enjoyed these last few chapters, and we'll continue reading next time. Bye.